in this house, in this light quality, the play, works really resonate in quite a wonderful way. And I think you can kind of get a little bit of a sense of the architecture as we work through the space. We're going through sort of the formal gallery entrance, if you will, which sort of comes out of a modernist idea of a procession through the spaces. It really comes from the Bauhaus. Richard is really the modernist equivalent of Misesian and Corbusian thought, and he's the one that's sort of taken the almost late 20th, early 21st century view of using more refined materials to achieve this sort of, almost perfect form, and the nature of the relationship between man and nature. So you'll see spaces, in almost every space you can see outside and you can see inside, and the relationship of art to that. So the light comes in from all sorts of different angles and plays on the work in a very, very, very interesting and flexible way. And that's a critical part to the to the overall design of the house.
And I would even say that the spaces created are very sculptural in the way that he
unequivocally. And there is this story about Richard is that and most modernist architects is their primary goal is to sabotage the art. So what would work for them is to create a space that made art difficult to live in, so that all you saw was their wonderful architecture. And in fact, the house was quite interesting with nothing in it. But I think that it has really turned out, because of the different character of each space. The room we're in right now is narrow but very tall, so you tend to look up. Your eyes are almost manipulated into a vertical experience. Yet the room we're going into now, the dining area, has a very low ceiling. So what you see immediately is the outside. You don't even realize you're moving from one room or one space to another. You're moving into another environment, if you will. So you immediately capture the experience of being outside. And then you see, obviously, you're in a dining area. But by manipulating the space and by always having a reference to nature, it really is this sort of basic discussion of the relationship between man and nature, between us and our environment, and the sort of the prototypical way one would want to live. And of course, the art complements, that experience. One of the most well-known works in the collection by the late American artist Felix Gonzalez Torres. It's a piece of nothing more than green candies, laid out in a rather formal presentation, and the green candies and the green lawn behind it. There is a little showmanship going on here, I'll admit to that. But Felix's work is in the post-minimal vein, is more about, again, the relationship between the artist and the audience. And Felix took very common things and invites you to participate in the art-making process by taking a piece of candy and effectively helping create the form, or reducing the form, if you will, of the artwork. And his idea was that whereas a Manzoni, for example, was questioning the artist's role in making art and what is art, Felix is saying that everything can be artistic, and it's really about the way that you communicate the idea of it, no matter what the form, to an audience. So a piece of candy is something you're invited to take and to share. Needless to say, when this work is at the museum, it's one of the kids' favorites pieces.
I'm sure.
Actually, for such a simple notion, or what seems like a very simple notion, is really a very profound and important conceptual work of art, and that's what this particular work is. And part of the idea behind this collection, part of the idea behind almost every installation we do, is not just to have a visual experience with something beautiful or something curious and interesting, but it's to become a resource for teaching, not just about art, but about learning how to think. Why did someone do this? What does it mean? What is it about? And the whole notion of this conceptual side of art, not just the visual side, is what transcends the rather relatively narrow view of what is art. It really allows us to learn to use our minds and our eyes and our ears and our senses and to really reason and to think and to try to imagine things. I always say that this is my interpretation, but you may come up with your own. And I think that that's what we encourage, that there's no right or wrong answer, that it's about learning how to perceive. And one of the basic themes of this entire collection is about perception and what I call the edge of perception. What are you seeing? What do you think you're seeing? And what does it mean? And I think that's where we're trying to evolve this collection. It's really, to the extent that we're didactic or trying to force feed information, our goal really is to be a soft sell teacher and to be an available resource to communicate.
Super.
So we'll continue our journey above with our candy.
Yes.
So now we're in the sort of grand space. This is sort of the $2 space, so to speak. This is the premium seats. This is this grand volume that Richard created that is quite comfortable for the two of us to be in, and we can do chamber concerts in here and have 150 people comfortably listening to a performance or watching a performance, and it's quite a great space. And again, it's high in ceiling, again, where you feel that the volumes are just sort of overtaking you, but you also get a sense of nature because you're literally facing the treehouse. On the west side, you have this grand oak tree, and on the east side, you have this wonderful view out to the Robert Irwin sculpture that's built into the landscape, which we'll talk about later.